Good day. I'm Martin Cave. I'm the chairman of Ofgem, the Great Britain energy regulator, and I welcome you warmly to our Accelerating the Energy Transition event, where we are formally launching the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator with our partners, the IEA, IRENA, World Bank, NGOs, and over 20 energy regulators who are founding partners, as you can see from the photo which is about to appear on your screen. Here you see most of the regulators who have joined forces with Ofgem to launch the accelerator, and we are very grateful to them for doing so. At COP26, the world is coming together to chart a path to keep global warming within 1.5 degrees. Regulators around the world will play a critical role in turning ambition and high-level policies into real-world action. This is the first time that Ofgem has been at a COP. We are determined not just to do everything we can to support a carbon-neutral future in the UK, but to use the momentum of the UK hosting COP26 in Glasgow to accelerate greener, fairer energy globally through collaboration and learnings and best practice. In May, we held our first Green Fair Futures virtual event, at which a distinguished panel of leaders from energy regulators held a panel discussion. Since May, Ofgem has held 4 events on a number of key themes for the energy transition: electric transport, flexibility, net zero in price controls, and a regulatory session in the GGI Osowog event developing cross-border trading of renewable electricity generation. During these events, we have heard from over 40 speakers, with many from international organizations. We have learned a lot from hearing of these different experiences, and from the event feedback and commentary our delegates have given us too. Today we have hundreds of delegates from all across the world. Our international audience has been growing over the past 6 months. Welcome to you all. I'm now proud to be opening the event where we take the collaboration with global regulators further with the accelerator. This will enable energy regulators from around the world to help solve problems, to help transform energy systems we regulate at lowest cost, with the thought leadership and expertise of leading global organizations. I'm looking forward to hearing from our partners, the IEA, IRENA and World Bank, as well as from leaders from a very wide spread of energy regulators who with us share many common challenges. I'm now pleased to hand over to Jonathan Brearley, the Ofgem CEO.
Thank you, Martin. And just to introduce myself, my name is Jonathan Brearley. I'm CEO of Ofgem. Ofgem is the energy regulator for Britain. So we cover all gamuts of energy regulations from retail to generation through to network regulation, as Martin described. And fundamental to our role is making sure we look after customers today, but equally making sure we work on that pathway to get towards our net zero goals. Now, although all of us are working on this across the world, we face very common challenges in doing so with very, very different energy systems. And that really is to keep the target of limiting the global increase in temperature to 1.5 degrees within reach. And that's a huge job that all of us share. And really that underpins what we're trying to do here. Now, having been at some COP events, it has been really interesting to see that COP really is focusing on the theme of delivery, of making sure we can make the things happen that need to happen to get us towards net zero. So specifically, that means generating more low carbon electricity, especially renewables, and ending coal generation, switching away from fossil fuels in other sectors such as transport, with a huge rollout of electric transport, making our energy systems more flexible to support those variable supplies of renewable energy while maintaining security of supply and cutting costs. And finally, particularly in less developed countries, doing all of this while expanding access to energy, which is such a key driver in all of our living standards. Now, I've been around the sector for a very long time, and there has already been huge progress. So we know that the cost of renewables has fallen drastically. For example, solar is 20% cheaper than coal power. 15 countries have agreed to phase out coal-fired generation by 2030. G7 countries are also committed to phasing out coal in developing countries in the 2030s. The number of electric vehicles is forecast to grow from 11 million in 2020 to 145 million vehicles by 2030. Last month, the UK government published the landmark Net Zero strategy, the most detailed plan ever setting out how the UK will hit net zero by 2050. But we all know that means a lot of work, a lot of action. The UK and everyone needs to go further and faster. And really, that's what the Accelerator is all about. Now, before I come on to talk about the Accelerator, I do want to talk about a challenge we're all facing at the moment. So many countries are trying to adapt to the unprecedented change in the gas price that we have seen across the world. That's had big impacts on us and big impacts on our customers today, and that's true in Britain as it is in many other countries. Now, there's lots of lessons for us to learn in terms of regulation, but the important thing for me is that adds to the case for following the path for net zero, and it adds to the case for diversification of our sources of supply and really building up our net zero future, not only for climate reasons, but for security reasons and indeed for cost reasons. Now, there is a lot of collaboration, of course, between regulators already. We are an active member of SEEA, the Council of European Energy Regulators, and the International Confederation of Energy Regulators. And while these are excellent fora, they rely on the expertise and the limited time and resources of the regulators themselves. And really, that's why I'm so excited to be here today and to launch the global initiative with the IEA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, and the World Bank, the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator. The Accelerator will bring regulators together to solve common challenges and share knowledge with the support of those leading global organizations. This will enable them to accelerate the transformation of energy systems we regulate at lowest cost. In particular, it can help countries with less developed energy systems to leapfrog the carbon-intensive pathways that many of us have previously taken. It will complement existing regulatory networks with knowledge generated through the Accelerator being shared much more widely through the fora that I've just mentioned. I want to thank the UK government for providing seed funding for the first year of the Accelerator. 21 regulators from across the world have put their names on the joint statement alongside Ofgem, and many of whom we will hear from today. The Accelerator will be open to all energy regulators, and we want more regulators to join, especially those from developing countries. Yesterday, we held a policy workshop with the IEA, IRENA, World Bank, and energy regulators, where they discussed some of the most pressing issues in decarbonising our energy systems. My colleague Jane will update us all on the outcomes later in the conference programme. Tomorrow, I am proud to be speaking on behalf of the Accelerator at the launch of the GGI One Sun, One World, One Grid event, with many political, energy sector and consumer organisations in the audience. I will outline how regulators and our partners have a critical role in turning ambition and high-level policies into real-world action. I now hand over to Ambassador Mary Bruce Warlick, Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. Over to you.
Thank you so very much, Jonathan. It's my great pleasure to be with you today. Good afternoon to all colleagues from around the world who have joined us. It's, as I said, a real pleasure to be with you for the launch of the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator. The IEA has long-standing experience working with energy regulators in countries and regions really all around the world. Just one example is our engagement with the ASEAN Energy Regulatory Network in connection with their work to establish multilateral power trade in ASEAN. And just last week, I was in Singapore, where I had the opportunity to participate in this forum, which focused, among other subjects, on advancing energy transitions and decarbonizing our energy systems, as well as on enhancing system integration of renewables and low carbon technologies. In Europe, the IEA works with the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators and the Council of Energy Regulators, as well as individual regulators across Europe on EU electricity market design with regard to the system integration of higher shares of renewables and medium-term electricity adequacy. In India, the IEA has supported India's Central Electricity Regulatory Commission on the design of the reforms of the real-time and day-ahead electricity markets, alongside a collaboration with state regulators on tariff regulation and distribution sector reform across India. And with Canada's National Energy Board, the IEA has also led regulatory dialogues on data statistics, energy market outlooks, and long term energy modeling in order to foster transparency and data quality. Energy regulators clearly have an important role to play in facilitating the important enabling environments that stimulate investment and ultimately the realization of key policy targets. And regulators indeed face shared challenges in connection with the clean energy transition. These include such topics as renewables integration, tariff structures, electrification, transport, hydrogen, and many more. The IEA is truly proud to be part of this new accelerator and is committed to support regulators in their important mission to facilitate clean energy transitions. And it's wonderful news to hear that 20 energy regulators from around the world have already joined the accelerator as founding partners. Bringing regulators together to share their experiences and learnings is really at the heart of the accelerator. And we believe this is an initiative that will really bring value and help to advance regulatory thinking and implementation around the world. I'd like to commend the UK government, and in particular Ofgem, for leading the development of this important initiative. And I'd like to add that we are proud of the international collaboration in this project and would like to thank our partner organizations, IRENA and the World Bank, for the excellent collaboration, which has made it possible for us to present the accelerator today. Collaboration among these partner organizations and, of course, among the regulators will be the key to the success of the accelerator. Lastly, I'd like to thank all of the regulators who are engaging in the accelerator. We hope to enlist more partners and regulators to ensure that the initiative lives up to the promise of being an effective tool for creating knowledge and sharing experiences, and one that ultimately contributes to real-world change towards a cleaner energy future. So with that, let me thank you all again. I will now pass the floor to Dimitrios Papatanasiou, Global Director for Energy and Extractives Global Practice at the World Bank, for your remarks. Thank you.
Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those of you who are further in East. Achieving the Paris climate goals and transforming the global energy system requires decisive policies and investments. Independent energy regulators play a critical role in enabling this transition. They oversee a whole range of issues, like putting in place regulations that support renewable energy, low carbon fuels like hydrogen, enabling frameworks for energy efficiency, smart grids, and digitalization, or increasingly, dealing with the cost of retiring thermal generation plants. This work comes on top of more traditional mandates like making the markets attractive and stable for energy investments, protecting consumers, and promoting universal access to sustainable energy. Many regulators in the developing world have made significant strides in handling these issues. They have engaged with consumers in public hearings or through pilot programs to find solutions to help their countries decarbonize. However, several regulatory bodies are understaffed, under-resourced, and lack access to basic tools, techniques, or know-how needed to address the many challenges they face. Many regulators also struggle to maintain their autonomy and independence from political interference. In that context, cooperation and sharing of best practices among regulators from around the globe is critical. The World Bank is actively supporting the important role played by many associations of energy regulators in sharing regulatory best practices. Last year, we partnered with the Energy Regulators Regional Association and the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners and other partners to train energy regulators from countries in Europe, in Central Asia, South Asia, and East Asia on decarbonization rate design, wholesale electricity markets, and cross-border trade. The World Bank is also very active in supporting regulators through policy-based lending, assisting legislation creating independent regulatory bodies and improving their institutional capacity, supporting policies and reforms that are key to opening markets, integrating low carbon energy resources, or reducing pollution. However, more is needed to support regulators worldwide to accelerate the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. This support is especially important to help countries with less developed energy systems to leapfrog the carbon-intensive paths other countries had previously taken. The Accelerator will ensure that regulators who are key to speed up the transition to clean energy can access the knowledge and expertise from partners such as IEA, IRENA, the World Bank, and other regulators from around the world. The Accelerator will support regulatory bodies to learn from each other's expertise and facilitate communications on energy regulatory issues. One first challenge facing regulators is that the energy transition requires significant investments, which will increase demand and competition for capital. Renewable energy is much more capital intensive than conventional alternatives, but without the major operating expenditures associated with fuel purchase. Moreover, the dispersed character of renewable energy resources calls for substantial transmission upgrades that need to be carefully coordinated with investment generation. Another challenge is the growing threat posed by extreme weather events caused by climate change. This will require significant investments to strengthen power infrastructure or make new infrastructure more resilient. Such challenges call for the design and implementation of regulatory mechanisms that are technology neutral and provide the proper incentives to invest under uncertainty. Supporting the knowledge to steer these regulatory practices is at the heart of the Global Accelerator. We are delighted to be part of this initiative, which will equip energy regulators with the knowledge and solutions they need to build the clean, affordable, and reliable energy systems of the future for consumers around the world. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Dimitrios and Ambassador Warlick. Now I'm really honoured to introduce some of our regulatory partners joining us in the Accelerator. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Claire Savage, Chair of the Australian Energy Regulator.
Thank you, Jonathan. So as Jonathan said, I'm Claire Savage, the Chair of the Australian Energy Regulator. Australia's national electricity market operates on one of the world's longest but skinniest interconnected power systems. So our power system has a distance of about 5,000 kilometres with about 40,000 kilometres of transmission lines and cables. Like many power systems around the world, our generation mix is rapidly transforming. Just this past quarter, we've seen that record wind and solar generation has meant that we had 61.4% of our total generation coming from wind and solar. That's instantaneous output at that point in time. The growth and transition to renewables is reflected in many of our challenges, the need for increased investment in electricity transmission infrastructure to support the increased supply of more geographically dispersed renewable generation. We're also seeing quite significant wholesale market price fluctuations where we're having both negative and or zero price outcomes. And in fact, in this last quarter, we saw 16% of all trading intervals had negative or zero price outcomes, more than double the previous year. So one of the questions we were asked today is why are we happy to be part of this launch today of the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator? And when I think about it, the AER has always benefited from our bilateral discussions and our regulatory forums, and information sharing with other regulators is a key part of what we do. But the Accelerator, which has a much broader set of members, provides an excellent opportunity for us to actually extend this beneficial sharing of common issues of critical importance. We are facing common opportunities and challenges, but none of us have actually solved any of them yet. So we are going to need some innovative solutions and the opportunity to see what works and what doesn't work and to brainstorm alternative options. We're also asked to talk about just one success or challenge that we're seeing in terms of decarbonisation. And to be honest, it's very hard to pick just one. And in fact, my team gave me a list of 5, and I'm not picking any of their 5, I'm picking one of my own. And what I've picked is I think it's really important that we work together to understand how we unlock the value of distributed energy resources. So not just the energy they produce, but also the capacity they can provide and the system security services. And we need that to really support the transition in a least cost manner while ensuring adequate consumer protections. So as we think about complex systems like distribution system operation and market operation, and a whole new range of players like aggregators with algorithms, how do we make sure that this essential service is both affordable and accessible to all consumers, in addition to being reliable and low emission? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And just a second, I think that shared challenge of how we manage our distributed energy resources and really how we transform a system where they're playing a lot of different roles is something that we in the UK would absolutely want to collaborate on and think about. So now I'm going to hand over to Dr. Bakarat Ahmed, Senior Advisor to the Egyptian Electrical Utility and Consumer Protection Regulatory Agency. So Dr. Barakat.
Oh, thank you very much, Jonathan, for giving me the floor. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking Ofgem for organizing this launching and its leading role. It's really a great pleasure for me to witness this launching of the Global Regulatory Accelerator for Energy Transition. I am here today to represent Dr. Mohammed Musa Omran, Executive Chairman of the Egyptian Electric Utility and Consumer Protection Regulatory Agency, who really wished to be here today, but due to unforeseen circumstances, he couldn't make it. Distinguished delegates, Egypt ERA is an active member in many regional and international organizations, such as African Forum for Utility Regulation, Independent Regulatory Board of East African Power Pool, the Regional Association of Energy Regulators for Eastern and Southern Africa, the Association of Mediterranean Energy Regulators, and the Arab Regulatory Forum. Egypt ERA welcome and commend very much this unique initiative since it reflects much of the way we work. Indeed, most of our work at Egypt ERA has been part of the give and take approach with our fellow regulators, since we share the same challenges and interests. The regulatory accelerator could serve as a global platform, offering a good opportunity and a new window for cooperation, sharing experience and knowledge, and draw lessons from each other. Ladies and gentlemen, Egypt has started its journey in energy transition a long time ago and has a set clear strategy for cutting its emissions through increasing the share of renewable energy in the energy mix. The strategy has a target to achieve 20% renewables by 2022, and this target will be achieved by end of this year, 1 year ahead of time. This share will increase to 37% in 2030 and to 42% in 2035. In order to achieve this ambitious vision in utilizing the renewable energy resources in Egypt, a lot of procedures have been taken and incentives have been offered to encourage private investments and promote renewable energy projects. As a result, 32 international and local investors were involved to build one of the largest solar park in Africa and the Middle East, located in one place. It is Bimban Solar Park with a total capacity of 1,465 megawatts. It is indeed one of the success stories in Egypt that we are proud of. Distinguished delegates, I would like to conclude by reiterating the full support of Egypt ERA to the accelerator, and we eager to be part of this initiative. We also welcome the idea of having a regional office for the accelerator in Egypt. With this, I would like to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. And again, a whole set of shared things we have there that we're all able to work on together. Now I'm going to introduce someone else who I know very well, Dr. Annegret, or Annegret Global, sorry, not Dr. Annegret Global. I've given you a PhD, Annegret. So, Director of International Relations at Benetza in Germany. So, welcome, Annegret.
Thank you, Jonathan, and welcome to all the participants. I see we are nearly 300 now, and I really enjoy this, and I would like to thank Ofgem for this initiative. Even so, BNetzA will not join immediately, we consider this initiative of the accelerator extremely useful to exchange the new challenges of regulating for the energy transition. We have already a lot of papers started, both on the national level as well as and initiatives on the European level with the Council of the Energy Regulator, European Energy Regulators. There were several aspects mentioned already where it is extremely important to have to redirect in some instances energy regulation towards energy and climate regulation, if I may say so. We summarize this with dynamic regulation. And one of the key aspects is, of course, that the transmission and distribution grid and the generation, the distributed generation and renewable generation in particular, interact much closer, and that we as regulators need to set the framework and the rules and implement the rules in such a market-based rules in such a way that the interaction unlocks the value and functions well. And draws, let's say, the mutual benefit, as was mentioned also from Australia and others, from having the distributed energy resources input into the system. And one important player in this is certainly the consumers, and we need to activate the consumers and to make the energy transition work also for the consumer, so that that it is a win-win situation and that the energy consumers benefit from participating actively in the energy transition, for example, with demand response, but at the same time also contribute to the energy transition in that way, and so stabilize the system with electric vehicles, etc., and being prosumers. And I think that is the task for the regulator, that has much more responsibilities nowadays to ensure that renewables, which are an important part of the energy transition, are integrated well into markets and the grid. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Annegret. That was great. And now over to Abdel Latif Bardek, President of the National Electricity Regulatory Authority of Morocco.
Thank you, Mr. Jonathan. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I'm very happy to be here today in the headquarters of Ofgem in Glasgow as the President of National Electricity Regulatory Authority. I have been appointed in this important institution 3 years ago, but before that I have worked for the Moroccan State Power Utility roughly around 29 years. It's very important for us to concretize a long-lasting partnership between the different regulatory bodies by bridging the COP26 and initiating the Regulatory Energy Transitions Accelerator. Defined as the crossroad between Europe and Africa, Morocco's geographical location is a strategic advantage which conducts INRE to opt for Euro-Mediterranean and African cooperation with the objective of strengthening international regulatory cooperation in coherence with the strategic orientation of the Kingdom of Morocco. I strongly believe that the Accelerator is the perfect opportunity to implement our regulatory cooperation even further with the sole purpose of knowledge sharing on the common challenges posed by the fast pace of decarbonization. In this matter, the Kingdom of Morocco aimed to decarbonize and strengthen its energy transition along with national renewable energy sources development. INRE's is to campaign this national transition by developing a regulatory ground and framework to facilitate the integration of renewable energy sources in order to increase the country's attractivity by fostering new investment. Regarding the natural gas, we understand that the natural gas can play a crucial role in the decarbonization of the energy sector. With the scaling up of renewable energy, electricity production, biomethane, together with the hydrogen, can provide an efficient storage and flexibility solution. This combination will balance the intermittency of renewable energy and therefore allow the transition to cleaner energy system. DONERA's role is to therefore to establish a stable and sustainable regulatory framework which will foster investments and also guarantee fast track permitting and secure funding to enable stable and clear tariffs. Regarding MEDREG, which I ensure the vice presidents of this association or Mediterranean around the basin of Mediterranean, in principle, it's welcome such an important initiative like Accelerator to enhance the capacity of energy regulators to contribute to decarbonization of energy system through enable the sharing of knowledge, best practice, and implementation. However, in order to such a statement, MEDREG needs to get the approval of agreement of its member. This issue will be brought to the next General Assembly to be held on 17th of this month. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now over to someone else I know, Liam Shichung, Chief Executive of Electricity Markets Authority in Singapore.
Thank you, Jonathan, and good evening from Singapore. I'm delighted to join you this evening at the launch of the Global Regulatory Accelerator for Energy Transition. Singapore is a small island city-state. We have a land size approximately 720 square kilometers, which is about half the size of London. However, climate change poses an asymmetric challenge for us. We're starting to see more extreme weather, such as unusually heavy rains and hotter dry spells. Singapore is very invested in the success of the global energy transition and is committed to playing our part to combat climate change. At the Singapore International Energy Week, or SEW last week, my minister announced key initiatives as part of Singapore's energy transition to a cleaner and secure energy future. This includes quadrupling our solar deployment over the next 4 years. We've also announced plans to import 4 gigawatts of clean energy electricity from our region by 2035. And this will make up about 30% of our electricity needs. We also have plans to accelerate the deployment of low carbon technologies such as hydrogen and carbon capture, utilization and storage, and geothermal technology. Energy transition is a collective regional and global effort. At the sidelines of SEW, I chaired the Asia Pacific Energy Regulatory Forum, which brought together energy regulators from the Asia Pacific and also the IEA and IRENA. We had a robust discussion on the impact of global energy supply crunch and exchanged views on how we are responding to the challenges of advancing the energy transition. Energy regulators are the heart of this global transition, and I look forward to participating fully in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now on to Dr. Maya Melikidze, Commissioner at the Georgian National Energy and Water Supply Regulatory Commission. Over to you.
Regulatory Commission and the chairperson of ERA, the Energy Regulators Regional Association. I'm extremely happy to participate in this historic meeting. We are very delighted to join this initiative because we understand the deepest importance of this issue. The turning point has come when we must realize who we really are. Virus-like creatures whose goals are just reproduction and self-destruction, or rational beings who are aware that we must care for the environment in which we live if we actually want to continue living. Well, we are regulators and have significant intellectual resources to collect and analyze information and find the most effective strategies and methods that make a real change for the better. This initiative is an opportunity for us to combine experiences and create more fruitful, sustainable, environmentally friendly energy sector. As we all understand, the energy sector has one of the key roles to play in facilitating economy-wide decarbonization. Energy regulators are central in proposing and implementing energy policies that can support the process overseeing the sector and the directions of its development. ERA member regulators recognized and embraced these new duties as one of the work streams in its yearly work plan for 2021-2022. As the first step, the Energy Regulators Regional Association Secretariat launched a survey to assess the current status of members' engagement in domestic climate change, decarbonization, goals, and targets imposition. Let me briefly list the main findings of the survey. Energy regulators should provide investor security for a climate-friendly energy transition. Legislators should consider providing enhanced authority and flexibility for energy regulators to innovate into a supportive regulatory framework for a timely energy transition. Energy regulators are to ensure secure and affordable energy services throughout the period of energy transition. I'm sure that this report will be very interesting for our audience to get acquainted and to go into details. Well, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope for fruitful cooperation in the future. Wish you success. Thanks.
Thank you, Maya, and apologies. I think we missed a little bit of the start of that due to a technical hitch, but that was really, really interesting and absolutely passionate about the sorts of things that we're dealing with. So thank you. We're now going over to a video of Paul Cowan, Chief Executive of the Utilities Regulatory Authority of Vanuatu.
Distinguished delegates, fellow energy regulators from across the globe, greetings from the South Pacific island nation of Vanuatu. I am Paul Cowan, and I represent the Vanuatu Utilities Regulatory Authority. May I take this opportunity to thank the Ofgem, the International Energy Agency, and the World Bank for taking the lead on this Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator initiative. This accelerator platform would indeed provide a framework for dialogue among regulators across regions of the globe, through which concerted efforts could be made to accelerate the rate of decarbonizing our energy sectors. As a remote and a small island state, Vanuatu is confronted regularly with adverse impacts of climate change and ranked as the most disaster risk nation globally. Consequently, the country has set a high bar in pursuit of climate objectives, achieving a national target of close to 100% renewable energy generation in the electricity by 2030 is currently a big challenge for the country, with renewable energy currently contributing less than 25% of total electricity generated. Its vast distance from global markets contribute to high cost of investments and doing business in country, coupled with its high dependence on imported fossil fuels for its energy needs, already resulting in high customer tariffs. Electricity customers are currently paying an average tariff rate of 41 cents US per kilowatt hour consumed. Therefore, may I confer that Vanuatu's pursuit in achieving close to 100% renewable energy in 2030 will not be easy, given its current economical and developmental challenges exacerbated by the current COVID-19 pandemic. Hence, we see this platform as an ideal opportunity to seek cooperation and support from colleague regulatory institutions and development partners in achieving this common goal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Paul. And now over to Cliff Rechtschaffen, Commissioner of the California Public Utilities Commission. Over to you, Cliff.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'm delighted to be here for the launch of the Accelerator project and so grateful to Ofgem for its leadership. California has very ambitious clean energy goals, and we've made very significant progress in cleaning up our power sector that we can share with others. We also face formidable challenges to decarbonizing at the scale and pace that's necessary, and we very much welcome the opportunity to learn from our colleagues about strategies and best practices going forward. I'm especially excited about the opportunity to leverage resources, since even in a well-staffed jurisdiction like California, we find ourselves overtaxed with all we have to do. As our colleague Claire Savage mentioned a little bit ago, there are many challenges we face. I want to talk about one immediate one in California, which is ensuring the reliability of our grid in the next several years as we transition rapidly to a power sector that relies mostly on intermittent renewable energy resources and on rapidly increasing amounts of energy storage and other flexible resources. We're doing that at the same time we're shutting down our one remaining nuclear power plant, and at the same time that climate change is already stressing our grid with record region-wide heat waves, drought conditions reducing hydropower, and wildfires that threaten power lines and can reduce solar production. Last summer was a cautionary tale for us. California experienced brief rolling outages lasting a few hours during an intense heat storm. Now, over the longer term, there are many promising technologies I'm confident will provide the zero carbon dispatchable resources we need for renewable integration. And we're promoting and incentivizing these technologies. But we can't afford to have additional outages or failures in the short term, especially as we build political support for greater levels of building and transportation electrification. Hopefully, the path we forge will provide helpful lessons to other jurisdictions who are at different stages of decarbonization. We very much look forward to sharing information and learning from other jurisdictions that are tackling these and many other critical issues as part of the Regulatory Accelerator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cliff. And now over to David Danner, Chair of the International Confederation of Energy Regulators.
Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you for the launch of the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator. My name is Dave Danner, and I'm the chair of the International Confederation of Energy Regulators, or ICER. For more than a decade, ICER has served as a forum for energy regulators from around the world to discuss issues of common interest, share best practices, and coordinate initiatives affecting regulators, energy service providers, and their customers. Among other things, ICER aims to improve awareness and understanding among regulators of current energy policy and regulatory issues, including those affecting the availability, cost, efficiency, safety, and environmental impacts of energy service. ICER now comprises 13 regional organizations representing regulators from more than 90 countries. Many of ICER's members are engaged in the transition to a clean energy economy, and the accelerator will be hugely important for these organizations and their respective member countries. But as noted, many are understaffed and operated with limited resources. As we confront the energy transition in the midst of climate change, it is imperative that all of us have the ability to identify available resources, to brainstorm, to share our experiences, to assist with others, and to learn as we go forward. It is this communication among those in our regulatory community that will indeed facilitate and accelerate the transition that we are charged with leading. In my day job, I'm the chair of the Washington State Utilities and Transportation Commission, which regulates the rates and services of investor-owned electric and natural gas utilities in the state of Washington in the northwest corner of the United States. We are facing the same challenges as those Cliff just mentioned in California. And our state, like many of those in the United States, is absolutely committed to reducing carbon emissions in the energy sector. Washington has committed to eliminate coal power from our electric utility portfolios by the end of 2025. Our utilities must also be carbon neutral by 2030 and 100% carbon free by 2045. This is a huge undertaking, and it falls to the utility regulators to implement this mandate. Our agency is also charged with developing a roadmap for reducing carbon emissions in the natural gas sector. It's an ambitious agenda, but it has never been more important. And we know that other regulatory agencies around the world are engaged in similar work. And for each of us, being able to engage others, learn from others, and share our experiences with others is vital if we're going to exceed. The accelerator will facilitate that interaction, and I want to thank our friends at Ofgem as well as their partners for their leadership in creating this resource for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now to some pre-recorded videos. We have Jamie Jaime Mendoza Gasson, Chair of the Regulatory Agency for Investment in Energy and Mining in Peru. Then Malik Cummings, Chief Executive of the Utility Regulation and Competition Office in the Cayman Islands, followed by Jean-Laurent Lastel, Commissioner of the Energy Regulatory Commission in France. So 3 videos from them.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please receive our warm greetings from Perú. Desde Perú nos complace sumarnos a esta iniciativa en el marco de la COP26. En Perú estamos en el proceso de reformar el sector eléctrico y uno de los pilares es la transición energética. En marzo de 2023, Perú será sede del 8º Foro Mundial de Regulación de Energía y OSINERMIN será el ente organizador, una oportunidad que nos permitirá generar un espacio a esta plataforma para conocer los avances logrados. Permítanme también compartir con ustedes que Perú asume con gran compromiso y responsabilidad los desafíos climáticos. Nuestro país es uno de los 17 países más megadiversos del mundo. Vale la pena decir que el Amazonas, considerado el pulmón del mundo, nace en Perú. En ese sentido, nuestro país viene trabajando en una estrategia nacional frente al cambio climático para definir los lineamientos que nos lleven a la neutralidad en carbono en el año 2050. Esperamos que la COP26 supere cualquier diferencia y considere un camino sostenible hacia la recuperación. Le deseamos mucho éxito al Reino Unido en estos días de trabajo y felicitamos a la OFGEM por su liderazgo. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you a very successful day of work.
My name is Malky Cummings, CEO of the Utility Regulation and Competition Office of the Cayman Islands, OFREG. OFREG is responsible for regulating the electricity, information and communications technology, fuels and water sectors of the Cayman Islands. We also have responsibility for managing the .ky domain and the electromagnetic spectrum. We are indeed delighted to join and participate in this regulatory accelerator. I believe it is expedient and incumbent on us as regulators at this pivotal moment to join forces to address common challenges and obstacles that impede efforts to decarbonize our energy systems. We are optimistic that the accelerator will provide OFREG and the Cayman Islands the opportunity to leverage the expertise, experiences, and networking with fellow regulators across the globe in this concerted effort to address the existential threat of global warming, and in particular, to help the Cayman Islands accelerate the adoption of renewables to attain the aspirational goal of 70% by the year 2037. In the words of Ryunosuke Satoru, individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. Colleagues, we can make waves across the globe.
Hello, I am Jean-Laurent Lastel, Commissioner at the French Energy Regulator. We are looking forward to joining the new Accelerator initiative of GEM, as decarbonization is going to be at the center of climate action, and having a forum with other regulators is an excellent initiative. Decarbonization means pushing out highly polluting sources of energy of our mix to reduce our emissions. For that to happen, a progressive electrification of all energy uses will have to take place to shift consumption from oil towards electricity. It is imperative to ensure that electricity production follows the same path of emission reduction. It will also require investments in our electricity networks to handle an increasing share of renewables. This paradigm shift cannot be made at the expense of consumers with the too high prices we are all facing in Europe. But even if the main challenge is to shift towards electricity, networks and consumers must be protected. As Karl Marx said, man lives on nature, means that nature is his body with which he must remain in continuous interchange if he is not to die. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers for sharing their very early thoughts on how we might all work together. And it's great to see such a range of people getting involved in the Accelerator. Now I'm going to hand over to someone who's been hugely involved in setting this up in the first place, Jane Dennett-Thorpe, Ofgem's Deputy Director for Decarbonisation and Energy Transition, to run through the findings of yesterday's policy workshop. So over to you, Jane.
So thank you, Jonathan. Look, I'm really excited that we're here today, all of us together, to launch this initiative, and add my thanks to Jonathan. Thank you for your contributions. And also yesterday, when we had over 30 people from regulators from more than a dozen countries, as well as our partners, IEA, IRENA, and the World Bank, we participated in our first interactive workshop. Really, the point of that was to inform the development of the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator. The objectives of the workshop were to explore common regulatory challenges in the power system transition and to start identifying where the accelerator can make a difference. The day's activities included overviews from IEA and IRENA on the change that is needed to meet the existing targets, and actually what more is needed to be done if we are to meet the challenge of climate change, as well as key aspects of the future systems. We had really great discussions in smaller groups, defining what was a successful energy transition and also some of the biggest challenges to achieving that vision. The key takeaway for me was really that there was so much energy in the rooms and a real appetite to work together and share, much of which we've heard today already on this launch. And I'll try and summarise some of the key themes, many of which we've already heard today. They've been repeated, I'm glad to say, and it's certainly a partial list. It's clear that for the successful energy transition, we need to support widespread deployment of renewables, and we need the flexible systems to support this, and we need to unlock the potential of distributed resources and new opportunities to flex on the demand side. But we also talked about what does it look like? And we thought that it needed to be inclusive, it will need to be affordable and fair. Regulators will need to ensure the reliability of the system while maintaining affordability and inclusion for all. In recent years, it was noted that more grassroots organisations have become involved in the regulatory discussion, which is changing the scope and the nature of the processes. Importantly, regulators will need to make sure that the transition is at lowest costs and that the costs are fairly shared. Also, the transition will need to engage people, and we discussed the changing role of consumers and their changing participation in the energy system, particularly as we are decarbonising transport, heating and cooling, and the need for a more flexible response. And we talked about the regulator's role in engaging people in that transition. We recognise that regulators need to be flexible and nimble. We need to be open, creative, and how we address the evolving issues, to have the resolve to break through bottlenecks and to double down on the most pressing of issues. That regulators will need to continue to be balanced in pursuit of an effective and speedy energy transition. It includes balancing the needs of keeping things working and making rapid change, of balancing the investors and the consumer needs to enable that transition. We also discussed some of the most widely shared challenges in achieving that success. And I've just picked three here, and there were quite a lot that were discussed. One of them was coordination and long-term planning to support the transition and to maximise the use of renewables. And that was including regulatory coordination with government system operators and other stakeholders. It was about maintaining the affordability, in particular while electrifying other sectors where there will be substantial investments required and high risk of stranded assets. And finally, there were discussions identified the need to design and communicate both wholesale and retail price signals for future systems and effectively connect both the wholesale and the retail systems together to internalise the costs and benefits, but also to drive the necessary resource investments and encourage that consumer behaviour that we want to be fair and inclusive. But actually the key thing for me from all of this was I was left wanting to discuss more, and I know many others were in the room, so the conversation was really great. It is only the beginning, and I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to continue those conversations to develop a really impactful programme for the Accelerator to make a real difference on the ground. So perhaps we can all be that wave on the ocean. So we're coming towards the close of the launch, and I'll now hand over to Ms. Gauri Singh, the Deputy Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency.
Thank you so much, Jane. And ladies and gentlemen, we've just heard today the various challenges and successes that regulators have been facing in countries pretty much across the world and at very different stages of energy transition. It was quite clear that we are all on a learning curve in the energy transition, and it's important that an exchange of views and knowledge and learnings happens at regular intervals. It is our belief that the regulatory energy transition accelerator will fulfill this role, not only in providing the targeted support, but also in consolidating the knowledge and experience and best practices amongst energy regulators. IRENA works with 166 countries, and we see the depth and breadth of issues and experiences in the energy transitions. IRENA is therefore very pleased to be a part and to bring to the accelerator a global perspective, a wide network of knowledge and experience in this field. Over the years, we have undertaken a diverse set of activities, which are probably very relevant to the accelerator. For example, IRENA's clean energy corridors support the integration of cost-effective renewable power options in national systems, promote cross-border trade, and support the creation of regional markets for a greater share of renewable power. In this work, uh, we work with a large number of stakeholders, including regulators, and have a diverse and a very strong network in all regions that enables swift and direct access to the relevant stakeholders. Let me also mention IRENA's collaborative frameworks, which are a vehicle for dialogue, peer to peer collaboration, and exchange of knowledge on topics of common interest identified by our member states. Some of these can definitely be leveraged for the work of RITA. Collaborative framework on enhancing dialogue on high shares of renewables in the energy systems creates a common forum for exchange of national experiences and promotes technical cooperation and collaboration amongst countries. Let me also add, based on an extensive repository of best practices for renewable energy planning and modeling, IRENA also provides energy planning, capacity building, and training at both the regional and country level. Enhancing institutional capacity and strengthening ownership of the planning process, we feel is critical for a long-term success of national strategies. It is our hope that um, Rita would, the accelerator would contribute to translating these strategies into real life change and impact. In closing, let me thank Ofgem for their determination in bringing this vital idea to fruition. We look forward to working with all of you and our colleagues at IE and World Bank and making this accelerator a success. Let me now invite Mr. Daniel Kiptu Bargoria, Director General, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority of Kenya, for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Gauri, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're logged in at the moment. I am quite delighted to be part of the launch of the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator, and more so in providing the remarks at the closing of the meeting, together with other regulators and other world leaders. Just by way of context, we at the regulator in Kenya, we are the Energy and Petroleum Regulator in Kenya, and we are mandated for the technical and economic regulation of the electricity, renewable, and petroleum subsectors in our country, Kenya. Part of our function is tariff setting, licensing, consumer protection, provision of energy statistics, and awareness in relation to matters energy with the Cabinet Secretary in charge for energy and petroleum in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the International Energy Agency, along with the UK government and organizations, at the launch of this initiative to accelerate improved regulatory capacity necessary to decarbonize energy systems with the help of other development partners to keep the world on track to the Paris Climate Change Agreement, to have a 1.5 degree C pathway during COP26 is a great milestone for us to be able to witness this week. This call to regulators will play a great role in ensuring that we protect the environment and make the Earth a better place for the future generation. As observed in earlier presentations and speeches, the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator is a very good initiative, bringing together us as regulators to discuss the challenges that we face in our various jurisdictions and to also share our best practices. In addition to the work that IEA, including Ofgem and the IRENA, my previous speaker, speaking towards that, and the World Bank, there are great strides that regulators we need to play an important role to the energy transition, both in terms of encouraging investment to manage energy systems that increasingly rely on electricity from renewable and intermittent sources. Other topics that we'll be seeking to address are issues including renewable integration, tariff structures, electrification of the transport sectors and other sectors, and low carbon fuels such as hydrogen, which are currently under discussion. We at EPRA in Kenya will endeavor to promote regulatory transition accelerator initiatives to promote the use of clean energy in countries globally. We also see as our country, Kenya, being a leader in the use of renewable energy with over 90% of our energy mix coming from renewables. We are a member of EREA, we're a member of ARESA, which is a regional association in Eastern Africa, and the African Power Pool. Listening to a lot of the speakers who spoke before me, it is really key for us as regulators to continue to support the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator initiative locally within our jurisdictions through enabling regulation to promote the use of renewable energy, use of economic instruments such as tariffs to promote penetration of these technologies, promote clean cooking, and enforce sanctions to energy firms that don't comply with emission standards in consultation with the relevant environmental agencies in our jurisdictions. I just want to give a commitment on the behalf of us as a regulator in Kenya, and I'm sure on behalf of the other regulators that have been present as the founder members of this accelerator, that we will work towards the transition in clean energy to restore the environment and ensure a better future for our people. I think with those brief remarks, I wish to hand back over to the organizers and to wish everybody a good break, and see you at the next session. Thank you.